What's up, DIY Nation? Welcome back to UFloor. Now, in our last video, I showed you how we planned our layout so we didn't end up with those annoying full planks wrapping around all the doorways. I also walked you through multiple ways to cut your door jambs clean, whether you're using a handsaw, an undercut saw, or a multi-tool, and how I used a laser level to lock in the perfect center line so we didn't end up with tiny pieces up against the wall. Everything stayed straight and consistent throughout the whole layout. But today, I've got even more pro tips coming your way, so stick around to the end and let's jump right in.
Okay team, so I have the boards cut that we cut outside on the table saw as our rips, and they were like 3 3/4, 3 5/8, somewhere along the lines of that. But to get started in here, one of the most common problems that I hear people saying, how do I get the first 2 rows started? You got any secrets? What's the deal? So here we go. As you can see, I have this laid out where it is almost all the way across. Now, I cut the end of this off before I did the rip, that way I can use the other piece, but I knew I'd have this and I'd have it left over. That right there is going to be very important. This is one of the tips that Kelly came up with that works really, really great for getting that first row started, and I'll show you in just a second. So now that we know our starter piece starts right here, one other thing I do want to mention is that we like to stagger our boards like a short board, a long board, a short board, a long board, and so on throughout the whole install. Even if we have to cut one, like take this much off, it's going to be a situation where you walk into our floor and you don't hardly ever would you see a line that's lined up with another line that's installed in the floor. And it's easy to do. Just put your board back in the saw and take a little bit off, right? Or don't cut as much off. All right, so with that being said, this is the board that we're going to use to finish out this row right here, and I'm going to just turn it around backwards because it clicks in this way. So to get a good number on that, I'm just going to turn it around backwards and mark it. And now I put an X indicating that I don't need that side. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and cut this right here. This will be the finish for our starter pieces, and I'm going to use this. This is going to be our fake starter pieces to get us started. All right, I'll be right back. All right, you guys will come up here and take a look at this. See this gap right here? This is about a 1/2 inch, okay? But that's because I'm butting the drywall down at that end, and that's what that is. So, just like with all jobs, once you get to this wall, this piece of tape and mud gets put in here, so it builds that out just a little bit, and it also builds the other side out there. So this right here is pretty good as far as where it needs to go, because once we push it back, it's going to fit in there snug like a bug in a rug. All right, I'm going to push it back and show you real quick so we can get that done. All right, you guys, so there you go. You can see that I put the laminate down, and it was a little bit wider when it was up this way, but you can see now as I pushed it back, it works out perfect for our expansion gap right there. Not to mention our drywall is a little high, so I have that room under there too. So there you go. All right, so in the old days, we didn't use spacers. We actually used to take little pieces of laminate and just cut them up. You know, they'll be scraps, so we use the scraps to do that with. So you can use those as spacers on the side if you're using 3/4 inch baseboard and you're making sure to leave a 1/4 inch gap. You should be fine. So we got so used to laying floor throughout all the years. Don't do this just because Z said that's what he did. But we stopped using spacers altogether because we were able to pretty much start laying floor and keep it in place, and then just measure off of the wall over there to keep it straight. Does that make sense? Plus we had our spacers in the back that was stopping the floor from moving it, so once we got established starting point and got a few rows started, the weight of the floor pretty much held itself in place. Now you can always move it a little bit with a pry bar or just a pull bar, tapping it, whatever, and we probably will do that again later, and I'll show you that, just so when we have to make sure that we're in line with the mark that we made up here, so we make sure we're straight when we transfer down the hallway and get into those other rooms. But right now I'm going to pull these up, and I'm going to go grab these fake boards that I have over here and show you how to use those to get started. But before we do, walk over here and let me show you this. Our starting point on this board is right here. This is going to be the actual boards that we use. So we're going to pull them out for right now and leave a gap. That way when we go to put them in at the end, it's not hard to do. We'll be able to just roll them in from the back side after the floor is done. But in the meantime, I'm going to have to take them out and use those little boards. But I'm telling you to tell you that I'm going to have to figure out what my new starting board is for the second row, and I don't want it to be in line with this, and I don't want it to be within 8 inches of the next one. So we're going to make that one a little bit shorter. This board right here is 36 inches. So I think what I'm going to do is just come back and make one about 20 inches with a starter piece. And then, as I said, this one will be my long, that 20 inch will be the short, and then maybe I'll do a full board for my long, and then we'll do short again. You guys will see. All right, let's go ahead and get started.
Okay guys, so apparently I lost the audio on this video, so I'm just going to talk you through what exactly is going on and what I did to get started. As we discussed earlier, the board I'm using for a starter is a half a plank. It's about a 20-inch piece, which is the one that I have sitting down here, and then of course the third row would be long. However, when I do that, the next piece is going to land somewhere before the vent. I don't really like cutting the vent out of the middle of a board, so where we were initially going to do a long and a short and then another long plank, I feel like I'm going to make that third row be my second row. That way the plank comes out in the second row will actually land in the middle of the vent. For me, it's a lot easier and more efficient to cut the vent out of 2 pieces than it is to cut it out of the middle of one. So whereas I was initially going to put the first row as a short piece, and then the next row was going to be long and then short again, it's going to work out okay because the first board now becomes short and the second board becomes long, and then I can just throw a short one in for the third row. This definitely will help when it comes to cutting out the vent. Now that I have my second row established where it's going to land, I can mark the sides of the vent and use my table saw to cut the sides and a jigsaw to cut the ends. In order to get those sides perfect, I have made some pencil marks on the white piece of underlayment. So I move my starter piece back. That way I can measure off of the face of the board, not the tongue of the board. I like to measure from the face of the board to the back side and from the face of the board to the front side. And I also like to check the width of the hole to make sure that it's right. After I get those marks, I can transfer them over to my laminate piece, and of course when I'm done with that, I'll just make it match on the other side and head to my table saw to cut it. There you go. Easy peasy. You guys see what I'm talking about? Now right now I do have the real first row laying in the back, but I'm not going to click that in just yet. I'm going to go ahead and click the whole second row together, and then we're going to go over those tips we talked about earlier about taking some small pieces and clipping them in the back. If you clip these small little pieces on the back where the seams are, it'll hold the whole row together so that when you go to click the next row in, your last row won't come apart. That can be a real pain when it comes to installing laminate. Now, some people will take these small planks that I have in the back and screw those down into the wood. That's a great idea. However, my first row has to go underneath 2 pieces of door trim, and it's awful hard to get those things clipped together and then try to slide that piece over the floor under the door jambs and then try to get it clicked in from the back side, installing backwards. It's not impossible, but I tell you what, it is no fun either. So I like to pull my flooring off of the wall a little bit and use those little scraps. Get me about 3, maybe 4 rows clipped together, and then I can pull those small pieces in the back and throw my whole back row in, and then use my spacers as I slide it back and make sure to slide the flooring underneath the door trim. That's why we initially popped a control line at the beginning. It doesn't really matter where my flooring is back there as long as I continue to check it with my control line. I keep it in line with where it's supposed to be when it goes into all of the other rooms and goes into the hallway to center it.
Alright you guys, so it's the next day. I decided not to bring you along with me on the whole install because you guys saw how we got that done. We got that vent cut over there, we got that vent cut in there, we got our first row cut, and we have all the floor installed up to this point right here. Now the reason I stopped is because every once in a while I like to check. I've been checking periodically, but now that we've gotten to where we need to lay our next thing of pad, I want to make sure that my line is good all the way across compared to what I have in there. So let's go ahead and check that real quick. I'm gonna take my tape and right down there where the edge of the face of the laminate, not the tongue. So I like to pull it there and let it drip off right there, just like that, button that. Now if you come up here and take a look, we are at 82 and 9/16, 82 and a half right there. All right, and then on the other side, right there, 82 and 9/16. All right, so let's go in here and take a look at this and see what we have. So what I'm going to do is, you can see I have my mark right here, and we've moved it over, fudged it over that way. We took the laser and shined it down there, and we got a good consistent line all the way down, separating the hallway and making sure that line was the same off of that wall that's running down the center in that back bedroom. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and put my tape right here, all the way over here, on 82 and 9/16, and then I'm going to lock it in. Kelly, take a look at that. You see that? We're locked in at 82 and 9/16. Now let's venture down here and see if it lands on the crack. Oh my, look at that. How beautiful is that? Now, let's check the other side. Let's see, 82 and 9/16. Let's see what we look like down here. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. That means we're dead perfect. So what we're going to do is go ahead and lay the pad in there, lay all the way up to the door, and then we should be able to lay our pad going down through the hallway and be able to click into that next room and basically just repeat that same process in bedroom number 2 back there. All right, you guys, let's go ahead and jump back in and get this thing wrapped up. All right, guys, so here we are. We have tackled our first doorway, and I mean, we got a couple more down through that way. But right now, I'm going to go ahead and get this locked in and show you what I mean by putting it in 2 pieces, okay? So I have 2 pieces here that I believe is going to work. Let's go ahead and get them marked up and get them cut. Let's go. All right, so basically I just use my pencil, and from right there where it's about to be into the drywall to the edge of that right there, that's where I want to get that cut to. So right there, that's nice. And it's probably the same thing on the other side. Let me check that. All right, guys, I got these marks up. Now I just got to get them cut. I'll bring them back and we'll put them through the doorway. That's why I tell you it's easier to do it when you have 2 pieces. You can put this piece in and then get it knocked over. Now I like to go a little bit more than I need to so that I can go that way and this way and then bring them together. I'm gonna have to close the door for this one. All right, so this is what I was talking about. So we got this gap and I'm just gonna close it up by hitting it with my hammer. Look at that, pop, and it's in. Nice, now I can come back this way and even it out. All right, let's finish putting that in. She's in, guys. All right, and that's, now we can just bring the other one in, and it's a half a plank right there, and just fits right in. We don't have to worry about cutting around any of these door jambs. Boom.
cut the holes for these.
All right, guys, here is the moment of truth. This is where we find out if we actually come around and click in. Now, there's not much to click in over there, but once I do get this clicked in, I can click the other side in and then run one across that, and that should be a good indicator whether we're lined up good. But I believe we are, because I pulled my numbers from my line to the crack up there at 82.5 and 82 and 9/16 down there. It was beautiful. All right, let's go. Let's get this thing fit. This way. Looking good. All right, we are almost there. Let's do it. And 1 or 2 pops, yeah? 1 pop, get it. Look at that, look at that. Awesome. All right, I'm gonna close this gap up down here and that should square everything up. Good. Go take a look down there.
Connected. And we're tight right here.
Alright folks, so we have come to one of the most crucial parts of the install, because see, once we get past this, we can always go backwards in these little closets like I said, but hooking into these big rooms and going forward is pretty crucial for the rest of the install. You want to make sure you have a pretty good expansion gap around your perimeter. That way, if you do need to get back there with a pull bar or a pry bar and give a little tip tap, whatever, you can do that. Luckily for us, I went and checked this as I was going through the install all the way to my line here every time I went 2 or 3 cracks. And so far, now that I'm ready to go around into that other bedroom back there, bedroom number 2, I want to show you what we're looking like. So let's go down and take a look. All right, if I pull this back right here, the line we made is to the edge of the tongue, and you can see the black line right there going all the way down the edge of that tongue. Now we'll come to this crack right here. If you look there, we are at, it's 22 and 11/16. Now it looks like 3/4 because of the thickness of the pad, but that's about where the tongue is, right there where that line is. All right, 3/4, 13/16, 11. Okay, so now let's go down here. And to the edge of this crack, this is our line, the inside one here. If you take a look at that, 22, and it's almost 3/4, so it's just after the 11/16, and we were 11/16 down there, and it looked like 3/4 with the pad, right? Same thing on this side over here. We want to make sure we're the same on both sides. Take a look at that. Here's our line right there. We are at that 11/16. See that? Now let's go check the brand new bedroom and see where we stand with that. On this side of the doorway, look at that. We're at 3/4. 3/4, I'll take that. And then right here on this side, we are right there at almost 13/16. So we knew that it was slightly fudged that way. I believe we're going to be able to get this thing in here, and if not, like I said, I can go back there where my expansion gap is, take my pull bar and tap, 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 because it's only going to have to go like that much if it needs to. But I believe we're going to be able to get it in. All right, so let's go ahead and try. All right, moment of truth. Moment of truth. All right, so we locked in. Just gotta make sure we are straight. Alright team, so right here I'm 2 planks away from the wall, but I've also got this doorway I've got to deal with, and this is where a lot of people make things way harder than they need to be. Most folks just keep running the flooring straight through the doorway, then try to come back and put the last row in. The problem is, once everything is already locked together, it's almost impossible to slide that board under the door jamb, pull it back, and then try to click it in backwards on the long side and on the short side. You're basically fighting the hallway, the doorway, and the wall all at once. So instead, I go ahead and put that piece right where it needs to be before I lock everything else down. I slide it under the door jamb, get it lined up, and then I take a small tapping block, set it right on the face of the laminate, and hook my pull bar over that. That way I can bang it into place without messing up the walls, and it just makes life a whole lot easier in this tight little spot. Then, once I get down to that final row, here's what I like to do. I take my pry bar and set it against the long side of the plank to keep steady pressure on it. And then when I tap the face with my mallet, that vibration helps the plank kind of walk itself right into place. It's smoother, it's controlled, and it keeps you from having to wrestle with it. There it is, guys. Laminate installed under the door jamb all the way around. And now we have finally made it into our last room, the master bedroom. So let's talk about a few things there. Alright guys, now that we're in the master bedroom, I'm already about halfway in, but I've got this corner to go around, and this is where some people start guessing on their cuts. So here's the way I like to do it. Instead of measuring right up against the wall and hoping for the best, I take the 2 or 3 planks that are going in this spot, and I go ahead and click those together first. Once they are locked in, I set the end of that piece right at the bathroom door threshold in front of me, and make sure my expansion gap is exactly where it needs to be. Don't skip that part. Now, for the trick that makes this easy, I grab another board and click it in where the next row would go. Then I take those pieces that I put together earlier and clip them right into that board. Doing that leaves a nice little void along the wall, and that gap is what lets me slide my tape measure in and get accurate measurements for the boards that have to go around the corner. So instead of fighting the wall, fighting the angle, and wasting planks on bad cuts, this gives me a clean access, solid measurements, and everything just fits the first time. Alright team, for the transition, I start by setting the U channel where it needs to go, then line up my notch transition and screw the channel down. After that, I drop the transition in and tap it in place with my mallet or hammer. Just don't hit it too hard. There you have it. Alright guys, it looks like that's going to do it for me on this one, and I hope to see you on the next one. Until next time, take care and stay safe. Peace.